All right. So the topic today is survive the crash. How is it important for your car to be crash worthy, and what are the things that we need to see if your car is crash worthy enough? So right now, whenever we buy a car, what is the first thing that we do? We see whether the design is good, the mileage is good, the features are good. But as per what we usually do, we don't actually consider safety as a big priority in buying a car. Although the behavior has changed rapidly over the years, right now people are very concerned about safety aspects of the car. So we will go about this topic without further much ado, and then I'll just briefly tell you about. So I will introduce the topic, the crashworthiness, and I will briefly talk about the history of this crashworthiness, how the field has evolved, throughout the times, and why is it important for this crashworthiness field. Why is it important to study this and to make it a more robust decision making criteria while buying a car. And then we go about what is a physical test, and then we talk about different kinds of crashes: the front crash, side crash, rear crash, the materials used in the crash, and obviously the restraint systems that I will explain. And we will talk something about CAE. I think probably some of you may have already heard about CAE and what are the benefits of CAE. So we'll talk about that also, and we will talk about the career prospects in this field as an engineer, what you can do and how far you can go, and then we can just conclude the topic. All right. Okay. So what is crashworthiness? Crashworthiness is nothing but the ability of the vehicle to protect its occupants. So the stronger the vehicle, the better it is in a position to protect its occupants. It's as simple as that. So if you see the animation figure here, it's just a normal crash test scenario that I have just picked it out from the internet. So if you see how the car behaves in a crash scenario, you can see all the airbags deployed and how the crash and the vehicle is crashing. So basically, it can be achieved by effective dissipation of the crash energy by controlled vehicle deformations. It's nothing but how the ability of the vehicle to absorb the impact of the crash. And by absorbing the impact of the crash and by deforming, it can protect the passenger compartment and basically protect the occupant from a fatal injury or a very serious injury. The car also does not come to a random stop, because you don't want the occupant to also experience a lot of G-force. So there are a lot of, it's a very complicated process. It's a very elaborate process. There are a lot of departments in a way. When you do a vehicle development, there's a lot of departments that are involved, and crash is one of the main criteria as of now. I'm sure you've heard about a lot of recent tests that has happened. I think it was featured in the news also, how it was a 4-star vehicle, 5-star vehicle. So because the reason why these things are shown on TV and these are actually advertised is because people are more concerned about this, and they just want to make sure whatever car they're buying is worth their money and worth their life. We'll move on to the next slide. All right. So basically, as I said, talk about the history. So as far as long as 1896, that was the first person that was killed by a car accident. And then after that, 1944, 1951, slowly the research has started, because the number of car accidents started to increase, and they needed to find a way how we can address this issue and reduce it, because obviously you've invented the car, but there is a necessity that even the technology needs to be safe for the people to use it. So then after that, then it came 1965, then books started to be written, and obviously the developed countries, mainly the American and the European nations, they got together and developed a lot of different kind of ways to actually make the car safer. So how do you make the car safer is to actually test the car at different crash scenarios. If you can see in these are scenarios that are replicated to create supposedly a front crash, how the behavior of the occupant is there. Actually, long before, it was they used, instead of, we have crash test dummies right now to show the behavior of the occupants, but before it was either cadavers was used, or some other kind of dummies were used. So, and also even to accelerate the car into the obstacle, right? So there's a rocket, hot water rocket wagon was developed to push the vehicle towards the obstacle. And then after that, so after the crash actually happens, they study the behavior of the car, and then you add some additional reinforcements to the car, and then test it again. So it was a process that is iterative, and that is a lot of cost involved. But since the priority of the customers, and the customers were more sensitized to having a more safer car, they wanted to make sure that a lot of research goes into this area. All right. So then after 1966, 1980, there were the technology obviously improved, and how to accelerate the car in a test scenario was done. A lot of different kind of dummies were, used. And during 1980s, first airbags were used in the test to, actually simulate the, actual crash scenario. So as the years passed by, the technology obviously improved to a great deal. And then obviously this is the current scenario where you have different kinds of tests that were performed on a car. And say for example, this is the front offset frontal crash, where you have barrier here, and the car is made to impact there, and with the dummy and the airbag, and then you study the behavior of each of the crashed car, and how it has crashed, and whether it can do a better job at how the occupant is behaving. That's one scenario. Then you have not only for frontal impact, obviously, and then there is a side pole impact, and then there is a rear impact, and impact with, as I said, dummy and the airbag. So there are a lot of things that they take care while doing simulating a crash scenario, and it's a very, very, very expensive business to do this. And but it has something has to be done here. And the objective of every car company is to obviously to reduce the number of tests, and just do the minimum number of tests that is needed to make sure that the car is safe. So, as I said, let's talk about the significance of the of this areas as a whole. So, as I said, the road deaths, actually, it's underestimated the kind of damage it causes to the nation, the infrastructure, the general population. If you see the 18 to 35, where normally people, young people drive little faster. Obviously, it is not something which you can control all the time. A driver behavior, your driver behavior, and the driver of the other car's behavior, you cannot control, but you can definitely control to a certain extent how the car behaves in a crash, in an unavoidable. Sometimes crashes are unavoidable, so once, if the crash happens, how you can avoid it or to minimize it to a smaller extent, that is the whole objective here. So even in India, these are some of the statistics are there. The deaths have been increasing, and obviously the government, I think 3-4 years back, have taken notice of the kind of road fatalities are there in India, and the increasing number. It's a very alarming number in India. It's as actually it has been neglected a long time. Because the customers are not sensitized to the safety aspects. Even the car manufacturers don't place much importance to it, because the customers just want mileage or the design. They just concentrate on that. But obviously, seeing the number of deaths that have been increasing, year by year, now customers are also very picky about which car they want to take, even though even if the mileage, everything is good, even though it is cheaper. Because the whole point is that if you want a safer car, it tends to be a little more expensive, because you will have to pay for the extra reinforcement. Obviously some more extra features would be there, or the structure would be much more robust. So in that way, there will be a cost aspect, yes. Customers are now ready to pay for it, because that is something that it can actually save their life, and they know the importance of it. So obviously the government has also taken that notice. So if you see some of the scenarios where India is, you can see the kind of deaths from road accident. And probably in 2017, the kind of rate of death in the road accidents has happened. Basically, as what I said, the most of the road fatalities are, are very 15 to 34 age group. So that is a big loss actually. So moving on. So that's basically the reason why you need to have a very broad approach while buying a car, or you decide to buy a car. You need to see whether your car is actually safe for you. Because there were a lot of cases. When for example, there's a nano car that has come before, and whether it was very cheap, and did someone prioritize the safety aspects of it, and why it was cheap, whether the materials, the structure that was used was was cheap, was good or not, whether it makes safety safe, whether it is considered safe for Indian roads or not. That is something that people have realized, and but it still needs a lot more improvement, honestly speaking. So that is something probably not only in India, even the world is working towards a better infrastructure to address this issue. So let us talk about what is a crash test. As I said before, the crash test is form of a destructive testing, which is usually performed in order to ensure safe design standards in crashworthiness and crash compatibility. So basically you have a car crash structure that you have to play with. And how you can play with, you have to increase either the number of panels that you have to play with the design, how the panel is, and and you have to actually crash the car and then see for yourself how it behaves. All right. So now, many people may not know this, but if you want to sell a car in your country, even in India or abroad, there are certain safety compliance tests that a car needs to pass. So, for example, if you are selling a Maruti, Suzuki, any car, you have to actually test the car for certain regulatory requirements. So that this varies in different countries. In India, it's different. In USA, it's different. So what they do is normally they carry out road accident statistics. So in the general population, suppose here in the UK, what they do is they take data, they collect data of all the road accidents that has happened here for a particular period of time. They study it. They see what kind of accidents has happened, what is the type of what is the nature of these accident. Is it frontal? It is what is the speed, what is the average speed at which these cars crash, and taking into all these aspects, taking the fatality, taking in the worst case scenario, taking in all these aspects, they come up with a list of tests that a car has to pass through. So in different countries it's different, and obviously in developed countries, in US and UK, the tests are more robust because the data collected is more robust, much more in-depth testing that is done. Obviously, hence the cars are more safer, and also in the fact that the cars travel much higher speed here, legally at least, in UK and US compared to what we have in India. So addressing all those things, the different kind of tests that has been done is either frontal impact. So there are so many tests that has to be done for a car to be, you need to be if you want to sell your car, you need to pass all these tests. You get a compliance certificate. So in India, there is a place called Arai in Pune in Maharashtra. So that is where normally a lot of these tests are done. There are some other couple of organizations which do all these crash tests also. So they have to give kind of a signing authority, and then the government gives you the gives you the go ahead to sell your car in whichever country that you are selling. So even if you want to sell a Maruti, if you are manufactured thing in India, if you want to sell it in US, or you have to satisfy all the compliance requirements of the car companies, of the local legislation there in the US. So whatever, so if you see all these tests that has been done, so it's frontal impact, side impact, they test the seats, they test the door, seat belts, then there's rear impact, then there is a roof, then there is even a rollover test. So if you see that the code names that has been given, so either it is, these are the code names in certain countries, and suppose the frontal impact criteria in US may not be equal to the one that is there in UK, and obviously not as the same as what is there in India. And because obviously the road condition, the driving behavior is different in all these three countries. Not only the car is tested for crashworthiness and other aspects. It also tests whether, suppose a pedestrian comes in between and the pedestrian gets hit by the car, even the car should be designed in a position to not inflict a lot of damage to the pedestrian also. So there is a lot of designs that we need to take care of. There is a lot of care that has been taken to make this automotive vehicle as safe as possible, not only for the people who are inside it, but they should also not cause harm to someone who gets hit by it also. Obviously nothing is foolproof. The idea is to minimize the damage, to minimize the injury that is happening to both the inside occupants as well as any incoming pedestrians as well. So on top of all these crash tests, you obviously put a certain dummies. So crash test dummies is nothing but certain companies, they create a crash test dummy. A dummy is nothing but an instrument where you can put a lot of calibration. You can put a lot of sensors, and you place them in the driver's seat, and you fasten them in the seat belt, and then once the crash happens, you can actually monitor what is the behavior of that dummy, what injury has happened to the dummy. Basically, the injury that has happened to dummy can be in a way comparable to, obviously, the research they have done. The injury that is happening to the dummy is obviously there are certain limits which the dummy can endure, and the sensor registers. So these injury values should be actually less than the certain criteria they have set. So that is based on a lot of experience and a lot of data that has been collected, and obviously these things change every year. Even the test methods and test speed, test criteria changes every year. So all right, so this is the standard test that has been done across every country for every vehicle that has been sold. So just to go in detail about the standard tests, as I said before. So there is side pole, there is pedestrian, there is rear head impact rollover. As you can see, there is a certain blank columns here, because in that way that the test is not done in for that particular that is what it shows here. So if you see now, as I said, in US, let's say for example in for frontal crash in US, you see there are so many tests that has been done. Why? Because the kind of regulation and the legislation is that a car has to be very, very, very safe. So as they place a lot of high importance in car safety, so they want to make sure that a car obviously passes in all these tests. So there is angled impact, there is offset impact, and there is even full frontal impact is there. And these full frontal impact takes place with different kinds of dummies, not only with normal average human male dummy, but they have child dummies, they have a female dummy, they have different kinds of male dummies. You have a very big male dummy, you have a smaller male dummy. So the idea is that it's just to ensure that all kinds of passengers, all kinds of people would be as safe as possible. Obviously, as I said before, nothing is foolproof, but the extent of safety that has been done performed in developed countries like US and Europe, as far as test is concerned, it's very advanced. And obviously countries like China and India are getting there, but it's going to take a lot of time. because the data and the infrastructure, and obviously to do all these tests in an Indian scenario would make the final car, very expensive to buy. So the idea is to how to ensure the car is safe, as well as to make sure the car price is still affordable for the final consumer. That is the whole challenge, countries like India and China. Now this is the talk about standard test, what the car needs to actually satisfy.